What happens when Quentin Tarantino creates the story, David Fincher directs it, and Brad Pitt returns as Cliff Booth? That sounds like a Hollywood dream, but it is becoming a reality. One of the most memorable characters from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is coming back, and this time, his story could be darker, stranger, and more dangerous than ever. The project, The Adventures of Cliff Booth, brings together three huge names in a very unexpected way. Tarantino has written the story, David Fincher is directing, and Brad Pitt is returning as Cliff Booth. And honestly, this combination raises one big question. What happens when Tarantino's wild imagination meets Fincher's dark and controlled filmmaking style? The answer could be one of the most interesting movie stories of 2026. But before we talk about the new adventure, let's go back to the beginning. When audiences first met Cliff Booth, he was the stuntman, driver, and best friend of actor Rick Dalton. Rick was worried about his career. Cliff seemed worried about almost nothing. He was calm, confident, funny, and mysterious. He could drive Rick around Los Angeles, take care of his dog, fix things around the house, and then suddenly become one of the most dangerous people in the room. That was Cliff's biggest strength. He never needed to tell people how tough he was. You simply knew. And there was always something mysterious about him. Who was Cliff Booth before we met him? Where did he learn to fight? What really happened in his past? Tarantino gave us small pieces of his story, but never explained everything. That mystery helped make Cliff one of the most memorable characters in the movie. Now he's back. But his life has changed. The new story takes place years after the events of the original movie, with Cliff reportedly working as a Hollywood fixer. And that sounds like the perfect job for him. A fixer is someone who solves problems that powerful people do not want the public to know about. A celebrity has a secret? Call Cliff. A studio has a problem? Call Cliff. Someone knows something dangerous? Call Cliff. But what happens when the problem becomes too big even for Cliff? That is where this new story could become really interesting. Cliff is no longer simply working beside Rick Dalton. He is now moving through Hollywood on his own. And that means he could be dealing with celebrities, studio executives, criminals, and powerful people who have everything to lose. This is also where David Fincher becomes such an exciting choice. Tarantino and Fincher have very different styles. Tarantino is known for long conversations, unusual characters, dark comedy, sudden violence, and stories that can change direction without warning. Fincher is known for darker stories filled with mystery, crime, obsession, secrets, and psychological tension. So imagine Cliff Booth walking through 1970s Hollywood while Fincher controls the world around him. That could be very different from the movie we saw before. And maybe that is exactly what the character needs. Tarantino created Cliff, but he is not directing this movie. Instead, Fincher gets the opportunity to take the character somewhere new. That decision alone makes this project unusual. It is still Tarantino's character. It is still based on his story. But now we are seeing Cliff through Fincher's eyes. And that could reveal a completely different side of him. Could Fincher make Cliff darker? Could he make him more mysterious? Could he show us what happens when a man who has always been calm finally faces a problem he cannot solve with his fists? Those are some of the biggest questions surrounding the film. Another major reason fans are excited is Brad Pitt. Pitt and Fincher already have a long history. They worked together on say Seven and Fight Club, two movies that became major parts of modern cinema. Fincher already understands Pitt's ability to play characters who can remain quiet while creating enormous tension. And Cliff Booth is exactly that kind of character. He does not need to explain everything. Sometimes one look is enough. Sometimes silence says more than words. Pitt also understands what makes Cliff special. The character never seems desperate for attention. He is not trying to become famous. He does not need people to tell him he is tough. He simply knows who he is. That confidence made Cliff so entertaining. Now imagine that same man years later, working inside Hollywood and solving problems that powerful people want kept secret. That could give Pitt a completely new way to play him. The setting also makes the story fascinating. The movie moves into the 1970s, a period when Hollywood was changing quickly. The old studio system was losing its power. New filmmakers were becoming important. New kinds of movies were taking over, The industry was becoming more competitive and unpredictable, and Cliff is walking directly into the middle of it. The Hollywood dream may still look glamorous from the outside, but behind the famous faces could be secrets, scandals, crime, and people willing to do almost anything to protect their careers. That sounds like a world built for Cliff Booth. But there is an important difference this time. In the original movie, Cliff was mostly protecting someone else. Now, he is the center of the story. That means we may finally learn more about him. What happened to Cliff after the events of the first movie? Why did he become a fixer? Does he enjoy his life? Does he have regrets? Is he still the fearless man we remember? Or have the years changed him? These questions could turn the movie into more than just another action story. It could become a character story. And that is probably one of the biggest opportunities for Fincher and Pitt. Cliff always felt like a character who had an entire life happening outside the main story. We saw only pieces of it. Now, we get to see what happens when that life becomes the main story. Of course, expectations will be huge. Fans are going to compare this movie with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That is unavoidable. The original movie had humor, violence, emotion, nostalgia, and fantasy. It also gave us an alternate version of Hollywood history. But the new movie does not need to copy that formula. In fact, it might be better if it does not. Let Fincher create something different. Let the story become darker. Let Cliff face bigger problems. Let the movie explore the parts of his life we never saw before. Tarantino can provide the personality and dialogue, while Fincher can create the tension and atmosphere. If those two styles work together, the result could be something very special. The cast also adds more excitement, with Elizabeth Debicki, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Scott Kahn, Carla Gugino, Holt McCallany, Corey Fogelmanis, and J.B. Tadena joining Brad Pitt. Timothy Olyphant is also returning as James Stacy. But ultimately, this is Cliff's story. And maybe that is what fans have been waiting for. Cliff Booth was always one of those characters who felt bigger than the story he appeared in. He had a past. He had secrets. He had skills. And now, he finally gets his own adventure. The biggest mystery is what kind of trouble he will face. Will he uncover a Hollywood scandal? Will someone from his past return? Will powerful people try to silence him? Or will Cliff simply walk into another impossible situation, stay calm, and somehow survive? We do not know yet. And honestly, that uncertainty is part of the fun. Because when you combine Tarantino, Fincher, and Brad Pitt, nobody should expect a normal Hollywood movie. Tarantino created the character. Fincher is giving him a new world. Brad Pitt is bringing him back. And this time, Cliff Booth is not standing beside another star. He's the star. So, are you excited to see Cliff Booth return? Do you think David Fincher is the right director for this story? Or would you rather see Tarantino direct the movie himself? Tell us what you think. And if you enjoy movie news, Hollywood stories, and updates about the biggest upcoming films, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Because if Cliff Booth has taught us anything, it is that you should never assume you know what happens next. And with Tarantino, Fincher, and Brad Pitt together, we may be about to see one of the most unexpected Hollywood adventures yet. Cliff Booth is back. The only question is, what kind of trouble is waiting for him?